So today I want to take a look at something that has really been intriguing me over about the past week or so, and well, as you read in the title and thumbnail, it's the topic of LEGO Star Wars and LEGO Star Wars MOCs before 1999 when Star Wars became an official LEGO theme. This is something that was brought to my attention about a week ago, and I thought it was interesting, so I made an Instagram post about it, and the Instagram post actually ended up doing pretty well. But then from there, I did some more digging on this topic, and I found out that there is actually so much more to this than I originally learned when I made the Instagram post. And it's really some of the most interesting stuff regarding LEGO that I think I've ever dove into before. So in the description of that Instagram post, I put the name Maestro S. Fujita, because at the time of making that post, I was told that that guy was who made all these pictures and MOCs. But then after, I did some more digging and I looked up his name, and it turns out he's a Japanese artist, and in 1992, he made a LEGO Star Wars picture story of the entire original trilogy, with 60 separate pictures for each movie recreating popular scenes from episode 4, 5, and 6. And then when he was finished, he uploaded them all online in the very, very early days of the internet, and they are all still there today. So in this video, I just want to go through these and look at them with you guys, because again, it's really some of the most interesting stuff I've ever seen regarding LEGO. So obviously, it starts off with A New Hope in the boarding the Tantive 4 scene, and as you can see, it looks like he used the old fireman helmets to make the rebel troopers here. And then when the Empire comes in, it looks like for the stormtroopers, he used the old race car driver helmets and then just an all-white minifigure body. And then for Darth Vader, in this picture, it's kind of hard to see, but he comes up in other pictures, he used the Blacktron body and torso with the black android headpiece and then a black castle helmet. And from what I'm seeing, using these pieces that I just mentioned was actually a pretty common way that people would make their own Darth Vader minifigure before 1999, when LEGO of course released an official one. But then moving on, obviously next up you're gonna have these scenes with C-3PO, R2-D2, and Princess Leia. And I have to say, obviously he's not perfect, but for pre-1999, this is a pretty innovative design for R2-D2. But then you have C-3PO over here that's just a solid yellow minifigure body that kind of just makes him look like a naked minifigure. But I mean, hey, I guess he did the best he could do. Here we're gonna have C-3PO and R2-D2 taking the escape pod to Tatooine. And this picture right here, the escape pod, for some reason is giving me like 2001 A Space Odyssey vibes. I don't know what it is about it. It's giving off a sci-fi vibe, but not a Star Wars vibe, like a realism sci-fi vibe, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But then you're gonna have C-3PO and R2-D2 walking in the Tatooine desert, and then you're gonna have the scene where R2-D2 gets captured by the Jawas, and it looks like for the Jawas, he just used short brown minifigures, and the hood piece looks like the hood pieces from the old Forest Men in those old castle sets, if any of you guys know those ones I'm talking about. And then right here, we're gonna have a sandcrawler, which, I mean, obviously it's cropped in this picture, so I don't know if he built the entire model, but it looks like he literally made, or at least made the bottom of, a full entire minifigure scale sandcrawler. And it even has the treads and everything, and you can see all the gears in there, so I assume that it's actually functional. And then from there, the very last scene is gonna be them at Luke Skywalker's home. And then from there, you're gonna have these scenes where they go into Mos Eisley with Ben Kenobi, and he did a really good job on the land speeder here, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually think it kind of looks better than the official land speeder that LEGO released in 1999. From there, you're gonna have the Mos Eisley scene, and for the background characters, he mainly just used spacemen, except for in this one picture right here where you can see the headpiece of a Fabuland character on the right side there. And then also you're gonna see Chewbacca here, which is just a tall brown minifigure with the same Forest Man headpiece that he used for the Jawas, and then just a bearded minifigure face print, which I think is kind of funny because it just makes Chewbacca look like a tall dude with a beard. And then in the last scene on this page, you're gonna see a partial image of the Millennium Falcon, which is insanely impressive for whenever he made this, summer of 1992, I think. There are multiple other pictures of it that we'll take a look at later in the video, but just on this picture alone right here, you can tell how impressive this is for the time period he made it in. And then from there, you're gonna have the scenes where the stormtroopers storm the docking bay. As you can see, he's even got the orange shoulder pauldrons on them that are supposed to represent the sand troopers. And then there's that Fabulan character again, and looking at it in this picture, I'm actually now pretty sure it's supposed to be the hooded alien guy that ratted them out to the Empire, so I guess that kind of makes sense. From there, you're gonna see another good shot of the Millennium Falcon. Obviously, the colors in some areas are slightly off, but I mean, who really cares? And then in this next image here, you're gonna see it flying off, and I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea how he made this image. My best guess is that these are two separate pictures, and the Millennium Falcon is a cutout of a different picture that he just put on top of this other one, but if not that, I genuinely have no idea how he made this. And then from there, you're going to have the cockpit scenes with Chewbacca again there on the left side, just looking like a tall guy in a hood. Then we're gonna have the Death Star scenes, and in this picture right here, he made a really solid build of one of the Death Star cannons, and then he's gonna have the Falcon up there in the background, which I assume is just another cutout. And then from there, we're gonna have more pictures giving us a better look at what this Millennium Falcon he made looks like up close, showcasing both the exterior and a shot of the hallway, which is obviously probably a separate build. But based on these pictures, I mean, it looks like he straight up just made a minifigure scale Millennium Falcon. Obviously it's off color, there's a lot of white and gray and blue and yellow mixed in, all sorts of colors. Well, actually also, speaking of the color and the amount of parts he has, now that I think of it, it's actually pretty impressive that he was able to make this much stuff without any type of way to buy parts off a website like Bricklink or something, because that didn't exist at the time. So honestly, now I'm curious, where was he sourcing all of these parts from to make these vehicles and scenes look so accurate? And the level of accuracy and detail honestly seems too good for these to have been just sourced from like a bin or something. I know back in the day, LEGO used to release just like bins of bricks that were like 2x4s and 2x2s. They might still do that today, I don't know. So I guess those type of sets might be where he was sourcing these parts from, but that's really my best guess. Other than that, I have no idea. Moving on though, we're gonna have the scenes where they rescue Princess Leia, along with the hallway fight scene, and then even more shots of the Millennium Falcon, which look awesome, especially this shot right here that literally shows the whole entire build in itself. Again, he straight up made a minifigure scale Millennium Falcon in 1992. And like I just mentioned, I would really love to figure out where he sourced all these parts from to make it this accurate. And then the very last shot of this page is of course going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader fighting. And you can see for the lightsabers, he's just using simple colored pull pieces, which gets the job done. And you can also get a better look at how he made that Darth Vader minifigure that I mentioned earlier. And then on the next page, you're going to have them escaping the Death Star, along with some more interior shots of the Millennium Falcon, and then the scenes where the TIE fighters attack. And as you can see here, I mean, they resemble TIE fighters. He got the shape right, but I mean, frankly, they don't look that good. However, what's interesting is that later on, in literally just a few more slides, you're going to see that he has a different TIE fighter design that looks way better than this does. And then we're going to move on to where they go to the Yavin base. And honestly, this is easily the most impressive build he made for this first movie here. I mean, look how good these X-Wings and that Y-Wing looks for the time he made these in. And like I mentioned with the Lane Speeder build, these look way better than the official LEGO X-Wing and Y-Wing that released in 1999. I mean, these builds are gorgeous. That Y-Wing looks freaking awesome. And with the X-Wings, I mean, minus the cannons being black instead of white, he got the shape and the color down perfectly. This is genuinely some very impressive stuff. And just these shots of the whole hangar scene in general and everything that's taking place is really cool. But then from there, you're obviously going to have the start of the final space battle, and then also this shot right here of Darth Vader talking to some Imperial officers, and it looks like for the Imperial officers' hats, he used more of the Forestman hat pieces, which I think is clever. And then in these next two shots, we're going to have where the battle is starting, and in this picture right here, there's the different TIE fighter design I was talking about that looks way better than the previous two ones he showed. I mean, he got the spherical cockpit shape down perfectly. This honestly looks like it's not even made out of LEGO, but it is. And then in the next pictures, we're obviously going to have the trench run, and it looks like for Darth Vader's TIE Advance, he made it at a miniature scale, which is valid. I mean, this is obviously a very big scene to capture. And then you know how the story goes, Luke blows up the Death Star, and for the Death Star explosion, he just used a circular pile of bricks with the super laser section up there at the top right, which I think is hilarious. And then of course, to end off A New Hope, we have the throne room scene at the very end. Now, if you thought the builds he made for episode 4 were impressive, what he did for The Empire Strikes Back is even crazier. So obviously it starts off with Luke riding the Tauntaun through Hoth, and I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw this, I didn't understand what it was supposed to represent, because it literally looks like a guy flying a dragon through the clouds. And then I was like, wait a second, that's Luke on a Tauntaun. Okay, that makes more sense. But that's kind of irrelevant. These two pictures right here are what I'm talking about that is even crazier than what he did for episode 4. This Star Destroyer build is insane. I mean, in this front angle right here, it looks pretty much identical to the 2002 UCS Star Destroyer. It's like this guy almost had secret knowledge about what these future LEGO sets were going to look like. And then in this next shot right here, you have a beautiful interior design of the bridge, along with a side angle shot of that aforementioned Star Destroyer I just talked about. Again, this thing is insane. Like the Millennium Falcon I was talking about earlier, I would love to know how he sourced the pieces to make this thing. But anyways, then moving on, we have a few interior shots of the Echo base, which, like everything else, look really good, especially for that snowspeeder right there. Like every other Rebel ship, he got the design of this down very accurately for the time he made it in. And then we're gonna have the shots of the Battle of Hoth starting with the AT-ATs arriving, and compared to all the other vehicles he designed, I do have to say this AT-AT is kind of not up to par, but it's still creative and it gets the job done. And also, as you can see there, the legs are bending, and honestly, I'm curious to see how he did that. But then the Battle of Hoth is going to continue. We have some shots using miniature AT-ATs along with the crash snowspeeder scene, and then of course the scene where Luke actually takes down one of the AT-ATs. And this picture right here is actually really nice looking. Again, again, he figured out a way to make the AT-AT legs bend. And also, if you look closely there on the head, it looks like he's using an umbrella piece for the dish underneath the cannon, which I think is kind of funny. But then in these next two pictures right here, you're going to see that for the snowtroopers, he's using ghost pieces, which, you know, honestly, it doesn't really make much sense, but I'm just going to assume that this was the best design he could come up with. But then moving on, we're going to have the scenes where everyone leaves Hoth and Luke flies away in the X-Wing to go to Dagobah. And the Dagobah scenes, specifically Yoda, are very interesting because he actually made a modified piece for Yoda's head, which looks really good. I don't really exactly know how he did it. I guess he just glued the ears on somehow, but regardless, it is pretty creative. Moving on though, next up we're going to have the asteroid field scenes, and then as you can see there for the space worm, he's using a shark along with just another cutout picture of the Millennium Falcon, which I think is super creative and honestly kind of funny. And then moving on to the bounty hunter bridge scene, as you can see, he had to go to some pretty creative lengths to design these bounty hunters here. From left to right, we have Dengar, IG-88, Boba Fett, Bosk, and then the return of that Fabulan character head for Forlom, and then Zuckuss there on the far right. I had to look up a picture of this exact scene to figure out who was supposed to be who here, but again, like everything else, I'm just gonna assume that this was the best method he had available to design these characters. But then moving on, we're gonna have the scenes where the Millennium Falcon gets tracked by the Slave One, and in this picture right here, you can just barely make out how he made the Slave One right there at the bottom left. But then we're gonna have the Cloud City scenes with more shots of this beautiful minifigure scale Millennium Falcon he designed, and then recreations of all of the interior scenes of Cloud City. And then we're gonna go back to Dagobah, where Luke lifts the X-Wing out of the swamp, where you can get another good look at that modified Yoda headpiece. But then we're gonna have the carbon freezing chamber scene, and he did a pretty good job at designing this entire room. But then we're gonna have Chewbacca and C-3PO over on the left here, and I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of cursed. It looks like a tall guy carrying the naked top half of another guy on his back. But I mean, hey, this was the design he went with, so I assume it was the best available. But then we're gonna have the scenes where Luke sees Han, and Lando talks to the stormtroopers and Imperial officers, and then begins the Bespin duel between Luke and Darth Vader. And like the Star Destroyer I showed earlier, this is another pretty impressive scene he was able to create. I mean, as you can see, he did a great job on the design of the bridge along with the background. And then this shot right here, I mean, he did it perfectly. The next shot of Luke falling down the shaft, not so much because it's just him laying on a table, but this shot is beautiful. But then continuing on, we're gonna have the scenes where all the good guys escape and then go rescue Luke at the very bottom of Cloud City, along with the shots of them escaping and then getting sucked in by the tractor beam from a Star Destroyer. And then in this picture right here, you get a really good look at the interior model of the Millennium Falcon. I mean, the hallway design right there is gorgeous. The circular shape he was able to pull off is pretty impressive and looks really good. But then of course, you know how the story goes. They get away from the Empire and they make it to the Rebel fleet and the medical frigate, and then the story ends with Chewbacca and Lando leaving to go find Han Solo. Now, out of these three picture stories he made, Return of the Jedi was probably the one I had the most fun looking through. It obviously starts off with R2-D2 and C-3PO walking to Jabba's palace, and this first picture, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of, but the second picture right here that shows the gate to Jabba's palace I think looks good. He did a great job on the design. And then we're gonna have Jabba's throne room with more Fabulan characters. I honestly love the fact that it seems like whenever he needed background aliens, these guys were always his go-to. But then in this picture right here, you see Princess Leia and Chewbacca, and he actually tried to recreate Princess Leia's Bouche helmet, and the picture's too blurry, I can't really make out what piece he used right there, but regardless, it honestly kind of surprised me that he even attempted to make this helmet in the first place. But then moving on, here we have Jabba the Hutt and Bib Fortuna, and this is the picture that most of you guys have probably been waiting to see. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is like one of the most cursed LEGO builds I think I've ever seen before. I get using a minifigure head and torso for his top half, but I don't really understand what provoked him to make the entire build yellow, just making him look like this weird cursed naked minifigure slug thing. I mean, based on all of the impressive builds this guy has made throughout this video, clearly he had access to a huge variety of pieces. So I honestly think that he really could have made Jabba here solid green, and he even could have used like the same headpiece he used for Yoda. But no, instead, he made it in all yellow, leading to literally the most devious and cursed mock I think I've ever seen in my life. And I think he knew it was cursed too, because this is the only picture on this whole entire website that he shows it in. But then moving on, we're gonna have this scene where Leia rescues Han, and then where Luke shows up, and then we're gonna have the Cell Barge and Sarlacc pit scenes here, and this Cell Barge looks incredible. I mean, obviously the colors are wrong. It looks like he used solid black instead of brown, and then of course for the sails he used old pirate ship sails, but the scale and the shape of it is really impressive. And then the desert skiffs look pretty impressive too. Again, like the Cell Barge had the wrong color, but he got the shape and the design down pretty much perfectly. And I also love the use of the dragon wings as the fins back here in the back. But then from there, we're gonna have the end of the Sarlacc pit scene where the Cell Barge blows up and they escape, which of course will lead into Yoda's death scene, where again, for the third time, you can get a good look at that modded Yoda head. Here we had the the Death Star planning room scene with the Rebel fleet, and it looks great. Then we have a really good shot of the Rebel hangar with some really good ship builds. You see the blockade runners there in the background. You see this very impressive Imperial shuttle build, which is ginormous by the looks of it, which will also show up later on Endor. And then if you look closely, you can also see a few A-wings lying around there too, which also look really good. I mean, this A-wing build right here looks leagues better than the A-wing that released in 2000. Then we're gonna have the scenes where the Imperial shuttle goes down to Endor, which is going to lead into the speeder chase scene, and the speeder builds look solid. And as you can see there, for the scout troopers, he just used the same design he used for the stormtroopers with the race car driver helmets. But then we're gonna have Luke Skywalker's Endor outfit in these next two pictures, which, if I'm not mistaken, appears to be just more old Castle Forestman stuff, which is also what he used for the Ewoks here, which I honestly think is hilarious because they're supposed to be like animals, right? Because they're Ewoks. But since he was so limited with what he could work with, he had to use this design, and it looks like they literally just went back in time and now they're fighting medieval dudes. But then we're gonna have the Death Star hangar scene, and you get another good shot of the Imperial shuttle right there, and you also do in this picture right here too of it on the landing pad on Endor. Again, this just looks very, very impressive. The angle of the wings, the angle of the cockpit, and I mean, I assume the wings can open too. I don't think he shows that anywhere, but just based on everything else he's designed, I assume they open. But then moving into the final Endor battle here, as you can see, he did an alright job on the AT-STs. And up in space, we're also going to have the Starfighter battle along with Luke Skywalker in the Emperor's throne room, and then various pictures showcasing the Ewoks trying to take down the AT-STs, along with the final duel between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker starting, and then the scene where Chewbacca shows up to the bunker with a stolen AT-ST. And then in these next few pictures, it's going to show the end of the Battle of Endor, along with Admiral Akbar and the other Mon Calamarians, which I really want to take a look at because he did a great job on these. Again, for the time, this is very creative, very innovative. I'd say out of all the custom figures he had to design for this whole entire picture story, these are probably the best. And then that is going to lead into the end of the final duel, where you're going to see Emperor Palpatine there, and for his design, he just used a white minifigure head and white hands and a hood, which works, which is going to lead into him getting thrown down the big Death Star shaft, Luke getting Vader off the Death Star before it blows up, the Millennium Falcon escaping, and then two pictures of the Death Star itself blowing up. And in this second picture right here, I honestly can't really tell what I'm looking at. There's just this big red scribble in the background that's kind of blending into the actual Lego pieces, but I mean, it works really well, and it's definitely communicating what this scene is supposed to represent. And then of course, the very last scene of episode 6 is going to be the Endor celebration. And then on the very last page of this website, he has a big explanation of everything that you can pause or read if you want to. I'd encourage you guys to do so, but it talks about how much time he spent on it. He even mentions that he made instructions for some of the vehicles like the Millennium Falcon and the Star Destroyer, along with how he made some of the pictures and did the compositing. And then at the very bottom there, it says, "I completed this project by myself without any support." And then he includes a collage of behind the scenes pictures, which are supposed to be like actual movie filming behind the scenes and not just behind the scenes of this project itself, which I think is really cool. But then from there, as far as I know, this dude named Maestro S. Fujita kind of just disappeared after this. I could be wrong, but from the little information I was able to dig up, he really never posted anything again after this. So if you guys want to go look at this website for yourself, I'll leave the link down in the description, and I'll also pin it at the top of the comment section too. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think about all of this down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out more of my videos, you can hit the screen right now.